economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live, this is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thank you for joining me. It is our weekend edition, and hope you're starting off your Labor Day weekend with us, and I hope you'll stay with us for the entire 2 hours if you can. This is going to be a great opportunity today to talk about some of the religious liberty issues. We're going to talk a little bit about foreign policy and our policy towards Afghanistan. This is the first time we've had this roundtable to actually address some of the things that have happened since Hurricane Harvey, so we will certainly get into that as well. And we'll get into this whole issue of the blocking of judicial nominees, because once Congress reconvenes, there's going to be a real push for everything from tax reform to confirming some of these judges. So those are just a few of the issues we'll try to pack into the next 2 hours. In studio with us today, Kelly Shackelford and Debbie Georgatos, both individuals that have been on the program with us many times before. And Kelly, let me come to you, because just before the program began, we all saw this article that came out in The Hill by Kelly Shackelford and James Ho, and we've now posted it on the website. So if you click on Kelly's picture, the article right beneath it is, U.S. courts say you can't pray at work, you can't pray at home. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, it's one of those headlines that people go, oh, that just can't be true. That can't be true. But people know, I think most people know about the Coach Kennedy decision. And what the Ninth Circuit said in that opinion was that anytime you are on duty and you work for the government, you can't pray. You can't do anything religious because you're the government. And which would mean you can't pray at work, ever, which is not what the law has always said in this country.
You could pray in a closet, but you could not be seen praying.
That's right. They said if
anyone could see you, right? Okay.
Yeah. So
this is public employees. Is it limited to public employees?
Well, I mean, it's not, but yeah, you know, I'm sure maybe they would try to limit it to public employees, but it's certainly government employees, because what they say is that you are working for the government, and therefore, if you do it, the government would be praying, and we can't have the government praying. Well, you know, that violates, I mean, back all the way back to 1969, in the schools in particular, the Supreme Court said, you know, neither teachers nor students shed their First Amendment rights at the schoolhouse gate. And yet that's what they're saying. They're saying, now, if that's true, can a teacher bow her head over her meal? Oh, no. Can a Jewish teacher wear a yarmulke? No. I mean, we can keep going. I mean, it's really extreme. The other one is the one that people really are shocked by. And by the way, this is a federal court of appeals opinion.
It's true.
This is right underneath the United States Supreme Court. The other case is the Marianne Sauce case. And in this case, a woman was told by police, these are not disputed facts. These are the facts that were taken by the court. A woman was told by police, first she was told the Constitution on her table wasn't worth the paper it was written on. Okay, that's a quote. Then she was told that she could not pray in her home. Now, what did the Court of Appeals? This was, again, the Federal Court of Appeals. They said that, well, since there'd never been a case this extreme before, that the police might not have known that they couldn't order people not to pray in their own home, and therefore they're not liable.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't pray at your work, you can't pray in your own home. If you live in the bizarro world of these two federal court of appeals.
Debbie, we've heard people say, well, we believe in freedom of worship, which is different than freedom of religion, but I don't think you even get freedom of worship here, do you?
Absolutely not. This is so surprising. I will tell our listeners I hadn't seen this case when I walked in, so I've been trying to skim it quickly. I do want to ask, so was this the court deciding on a civil suit that woman filed against the police? Is that what happened? Okay.
What happened is I'll give a few more facts. And by the way, people can read, any of this. They can read the briefs. They can read the opinion. They can at our website just look for the Sauce case. Look for the Joe Kennedy case. We have it all there. We have all that information there. This was a woman who lived in the projects, and a neighbor called who didn't like her, called the police because they said her radio was too loud. Well, she had been sexually assaulted before, so she was a little careful about who she would let in her door. And so they came and knocked, but didn't announce who they were, and so she didn't open the door. Well, they came back, and they got more violent, and they said who she was, so she let them in. Well, so, maybe that's some of the excuse of why they were so angry with her, but they treated her horribly. They told her they were going to arrest her, although they said they didn't know what for yet. She mentioned the Constitution, and they said it wasn't worth the paper it was written on. And so while they were ransacking her house, and she was told to sit right there, she just said, "Is it okay if I pray?" And this is when one of the officers that was ransacking her house came back through and said, "What are you doing? Stop that. You're not allowed to pray." So she wasn't allowed to pray in her own home. Well, she didn't go out and hire attorneys or whatever. After this was all over, she realized something was wrong, and she just on her own tried to file a lawsuit in federal court. And it was thrown out because, I'm sure if it was an attorney, it might have been treated differently. But the way it worked, it was thrown out in what's called a motion to dismiss, which means all the facts have to be taken as true. And the court's saying, even if all these facts are true, you can't win anything. You don't win. And so that's what's so scary is when we saw this, we said, we've got to take this woman's case, because if these facts are true, every American should win. We need to make very clear in the law that this is not allowed. You can't have police telling people they can't pray in their own home. And so this is when we got the really bizarre Court of Appeals opinion. So you can't pray in your own home. And then if you're Coach Kennedy or you're any other person, you're supposedly not able to pray in public or any time while you're connected to the government.
This will tie into a lot of things we'll talk about tonight. Now, thank you so much for that summary. And I will point out for our listeners, this happened in San Francisco, it appears to, which is not really America. But on the most serious note is there is just a growing prevalent assumption on the American left that even leaving politics out of it, culturally, that religion is not to be tolerated, not to be, maybe inside your own church or your synagogue, fine. But beside that, it's just not to be assumed to be part of the normal American culture. And so these officers, it's astonishing. Someone who's gone through the training to be a police officer didn't have any idea that might be problematic to say to her. And so there is really, as we always say in the show, reason for Christians to speak up and assert their right to be prayerful in their daily lives.
Well, that's our first article, and it is on the website, and my assignment to you is to take the time to read it, and then you can actually forward it. There's a place where you can hit that share button. You could tweet it. You could put it on your Facebook. If you want to start a conversation, this article by Kelly Shackelford and James Ho, it will start that conversation. When we come back, we're going to talk briefly about the policy towards Afghanistan, then we'll get into all sorts of other issues. We'll be back right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
Even if it won't pass anytime in the future, we need to give credit to Senators David Perdue and Tom Cotton for drafting the RAISE Act and starting a needed discussion about immigration reform. Their bill would change some of the problems with our immigration policy that was implemented in 1965. The 1965 law gave preference to relatives of U.S. citizens over just about everyone else. At the time, it was thought that the beneficiaries would be small in number. That is not what has taken place. Nearly two-thirds of the new green cards issued each year are for relatives rather than for immigrants who could immediately help the U.S. economy. This policy has led to what critics call chain migration. One immigrant who is granted a green card sponsors a spouse, who then sponsors her siblings, who then sponsors her adult children. The process goes on and on for what seems like an endless chain. The RAISE Act would modernize immigration policy by using a point system. It would still allow family members, but also weight immigration towards those with skills needed in the American economy. Critics say that it would give high-skilled citizens from affluent countries in Europe a boost. That is true. But it would also help potential immigrants from poor countries that have skills needed in the American economy. Politicians who want to keep the current system argue that high immigration levels actually provide significant economic benefits to the U.S. economy. But an article in National Review quotes from studies at the JFK School of Government, and the research shows only a slight economic benefit in terms of GDP. A new policy that can favor skilled workers with high earning potential would also have a much more positive effect on our economy. It is doubtful the bill will pass anytime in the near future, but it deserves more attention and discussion. A change in immigration policy would be better for skilled immigrants and certainly better for America. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
From Sony Pictures, All Saints, the inspiring story of Pastor Michael Spurlock with John Corbett, now playing rated PG, allsaintsmovie.com.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
If you'd like to join our conversation today, we're going to be moving on in just a few minutes to some other topics, but at the moment, focusing on religious liberty. And the first article we've posted here by Kelly Shackelford and James Ho just came out. It's in The Hill, so you could go to thehill.com, but we've made it very easy. And my recommendation is for you to read it and to share it. But one of the other articles, which we'll come back to a little bit later, is one by David French. But I love the opening line, Kelly, because he says, don't ever forget that for some folks, separation of church and state is a half measure. It's just a pit stop on the road to de-Christianizing America. It's a temporary means to a much bigger end. Now, if you had said that 5 years ago, you know as well as I do, having been on the program all these years, that people go, oh, that's not the case. But even the other day when we had Chelsea Yeoman in here, she said, you know, when we used to go down and try to get interns, people say religious liberty. Oh, that's kind of like civil rights. You know, that's really good. Now she says religious liberty, and they look at her like, oh, you're one of those. Yeah. Some things have changed dramatically in this regard, hasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. There are people who have, issues that are important to them, and other people's freedom gets in the way. And so they're trying to make religious freedom something bad, which is, bizarre to anybody who understands the country, obviously. What I find fascinating is, I've been saying for years, because our founder said it, that religious freedom is our first freedom, because they understood if you lose it, you'll begin to lose all your freedoms. And as I'm watching what's happening in the country, everybody knows now there's an attack on free speech, just period, right?
Right.
Well, what are all of our cases on religious freedom about? They're about some religious person who's trying to express something religious, and people go, I don't want to hear that. I want to shut that down, especially the government, right? Think of the arguments now going on. I mean, I'm not talking about the Confederate. Let's go to George Washington and, Thomas Jefferson, and let's tear down the statues. What have we been fighting for, 20 years? All of our veterans memorials.
Yes.
That have been up for 100 years that have a cross or Star of David. So I'm finding it really interesting how what's breaking out, it's exactly what the founders said, that if you lose religious freedom, you're going to lose everything. So you got to really fight there because that's going to spread out. And so we're in a real battle right now for the future of our country, whether we stay who we are, especially under the Constitution. And I think Americans are standing up to this, but, it's not over yet. We're in the middle of it.
I might just mention, too, that one of the things we've been encouraging people to do is go to your website and get that article, or actually it's kind of a booklet called Undeniable, because some people might say, well, there's just a few here and there, but it's been like an exponential growth, hasn't it? Or am I misrepresenting that?
No, absolutely. And in fact, you're ahead of you're ahead of yourself here, because it's actually officially, and I think about a week or so, we're releasing the new version.
The new version. There we go.
Which it just keeps exploding with new attacks on religious freedom, so many that it's hard to keep up with them.
I think one reason the religious freedom was so embedded in the founders' thinking and in our Constitution is because it's not just, we use the expression before, it's not just you get to choose where you'd like to worship on Saturday or Sunday, but it's a really deeper thing about the whole nature of individual liberty. This notion in the Constitution, in the Declaration rather, about having rights from God that simply are yours because you were born and they're God-given, and and the purpose of the country is to protect that. That is a core notion of America that is about individual liberty, and it's just the opposite of what big government, socialist, communist governments can tolerate. They can't tolerate that because they have to be the ones setting the morals, setting the standards, and the idea that individual might have more faith in what God or his faith teaches him about any issue is really, it rubs salt in, or it butts heads with those who simply want to say, no, we, the intellectual elite, we decide what's important, what the values are. And you cannot have the intellectual elite ruling and truly free Christian or just true religious people, because someone wins and the left is saying, no, they win. And it really goes to what core of liberty is, to believe what you want to about life, and to the notion of America being a country founded based on your relationship with God, and then the existence of government to protect your freedom to live that out. It's a truly deeply profound distinction between big government thinkers and individual liberty thinkers.
Yeah, I think I think it's a crucial point. What other country in the world would say that their freedoms come from God? Mm-hmm. Every other country would say they come from their documents, from the legislature, ultimately, from the lawgiver or the king or whatever. We're the only ones that say, no. Our freedoms come from God, so the legislature can't take them away. A despotic king can't take them away. And so that's very different, and that's kind of what we're fighting over now.
Well, again, we'll continue talking about religious liberty in a little bit later, but and again, we also have some callers on that. But we've now been able to connect up with Clare Lopez, who serves as the Vice President of the Center for Security Policy. Of course, we've had Frank Gaffney on for decades here. And, of course, Debbie Georgatos, you know her very well, also Senior Fellow at the London Center for Policy Research. And one of the articles we've posted here comes from Breitbart. Clare Lopez on Trump's Afghanistan strategy. Why are we fighting to preserve a regime under Sharia law? Debbie, what are your thoughts?
First of all, welcome, Claire. I'm so glad you're joining us today. Do we have you?
With both of you.
Well, we're glad you're here, too. I love reading this article that was posted at Breitbart about your interview, recording your interview, relating to President Trump's speech on Afghanistan. And the title said the most important point, which I just love to have you explain and flesh out for us. We in America are apparently getting involved in Afghanistan. And the title of your article, or the article, is, Why Are We Fighting to Preserve a Regime Under Sharia Law? So I guess I'll start with, what's so bad about fighting to preserve a regime that carries out Sharia law?
Well, right after 9/11, of course, our security agencies realized that the attacks had been carried out by al-Qaeda operatives who, at the time, Osama bin Laden and Ayman al-Zawahiri and others were being sheltered by the Taliban regime, then in control of Afghanistan and Kabul. Of course, we know that the 9/11 attacks were actually planned and directed out of Iran and Saudi Arabia. But the fact that al-Qaeda had found safe haven in Afghanistan was the reason why President George W. Bush at the time immediately ordered an invasion of Afghanistan to overthrow that Taliban regime and to destroy the al-Qaeda foothold in the country. And so we did that. And that didn't take very long. But then the problem was that under the State Department and its bureaucrats, we, the United States, helped to write a new constitution for Afghanistan, which came into force, I think it was about 2004. And that constitution very explicitly put Afghanistan under Sharia, under Islamic law. Period. End of story. The enemy has just won the war. We just lost. People didn't understand that, and they still don't. And so we engaged in years upon years of fruitless fighting, massive loss of American lives, many, many injured, huge expense of treasure, of our money. And for what? It's not like the Taliban just, invaded Afghanistan or dropped in from the outer rims of Saturn or something. They are Afghans. The Taliban are Afghans. They are the husbands, fathers, brothers, sons of the Afghan people. There is no chance on the face of the earth that the Afghan people, tribal, clans, conservative Muslims, are going to trade their allegiance to either Islam or their own families and clans, tribes, for supporting infidel invaders. That would be us. Not going to happen. And so what I was hoping to hear from President Trump in his speech of a couple of weeks ago, when he talked about what would happen with Afghanistan, I was hoping to hear a clear articulation of an overall strategy, a definition of why we are there, what exactly do we hope to accomplish, and what is the ultimate strategic goal outcome for Afghanistan, and then how would an additional 4,000 or so troops, American troops, achieve that objective.
Sure.
So
let me take a break, and we'll come back, and we'll get into that in a little more detail. We have with us for a few more minutes Clare Lopez, and she serves as the Vice President of Research and Analysis at the Center for Security Policy. We have this article on the website as well. And also, I'd love to get her thoughts about Dr. Sebastian Gorka and his resignation letter. So we'll take a break, continue our conversation right after this.
Point of View Radio has been changing lives for a generation. Listeners have been inspired to apply themselves in all kinds of ways, to stand up as lawyers defending the Constitution and freedom, to start Christian schools, training up a new generation, to launch ministries on college campuses, even to run for and serve in Congress. So again, what are you doing to make a positive change? One way to start today is to join the Truth Team, Truth Team 360, and help us change lives. Our nation needs a truth team very badly. Support Point of View Radio today at pointofview.net. Set up your monthly gift by clicking the Truth Team 360 picture and then carefully follow the directions. Pointofview.net. By phone, you can give at 1-800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. Or mail that first donation to Point of View, Box 30, Dallas, Texas 75221. Box 30, Dallas 75221. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Weekend edition. If you'd like to join our conversation, 1-800-351-1212. I know many of you want to ask questions about religious liberty. Of course, we have Kelly Shackelford and Debbie Georgatos in studio today. We still have Clare Lopez with us for a few more minutes, though. And for those of you that have questions about Afghanistan, we'll give you preference first, and then we'll get to those other calls. And I mentioned before the break that when Dr. Sebastian Gorka stepped down, he was on this program with us when his book came out, Defeating Jihad. In this letter, he said, regrettably, outside of yourself, the individuals who most embodied and represented the policies that will make America great again have been internally countered, systematically removed, or undermined in recent months. Debbie, when I look at the speech by President Trump and I hear the things by Clare Lopez, I sort of wonder if that's true.
I did too. I actually read that same quote out loud in my show. I just think I'm concerned that the close circle around President Trump is no longer made up of people who understood the battle for Islam. But actually, I would love to hear, Claire, your view on Gorka's role, if you do know about that in the White House, and what has changed. Who's President Trump listening to, if you can tell?
Well, when Sebastian Gorka went into the administration, he was named a strategic advisor to the president. But because of his difficulty, I guess, in getting a permanent security clearance, his role mostly seemed to be interfacing with the media and appearing on various media outlets, radio and TV. Like Steve Bannon, now that they're both on the outside, it may be that they will have a better chance of supporting the president's actual agenda and the policies that he promoted on the campaign trail than they were able to promote while they were on the inside.
Fair enough.
Yeah, Claire, Kelly Shackelford, let me ask a question about the Afghanistan speech, because what I kept seeing being said as why we're there was that we were there to make sure that it wasn't sort of a launching pad or a breeding ground for terrorism that would come to us. I didn't quite get that. What does that mean? Because there's plenty of those people there now, and there always will be. But so, how do you respond to that as being the justification for our, uptick in our time in Afghanistan?
Well, I understand, the thought of that, and there is a doctrine within Islam that says if jihad cannot be successful at the moment, it must step back, it must step down to regather strength and then launch again. So there is that justification for pounding Islamic terrorist jihadis wherever they are all the time. But as far as Afghanistan specifically goes, of course, we know that even though al-Qaeda had its foothold there, its bases there, some of bin Laden, Ayman al-Zawahiri, and the others, under a Taliban Islamic government, that's not where the attack really came from. It came out of Iran and Saudi Arabia, which arguably themselves are not only jihad bases for attack against the West and the United States, but are actually jihad regimes themselves. As in Saudi Arabia in the early 20th century, it was Ibn Saud that by jihad united the tribes and conquered a state that they then named after themselves, the Saudi family. And the same thing happened in 1979 on the Shiite side in Iran with the Ayatollah Khomeini actually launching a jihad to conquer another state. So we've got two governments, and I'd added Pakistan in there as well, where the entire state apparatus is controlled. The entire state is a jihad state, jihad regime. So, these ragtag bunches that are hiding out in the Hindu Kush, that's not the real concern. The real concern, I think, would be to the state sponsors of Islamic terror and jihad, and those would be Pakistan, Iran, and Saudi Arabia, among some others.
Also, Claire, I wanted to ask about, there was a statement by Secretary of State Rex Tillerson in reference to Afghanistan, and he made reference to having the ability to sit down, have Taliban at the table with us, and kind of negotiating working through things in Afghanistan. Is that even remotely plausible?
No, of course not. I'm so sorry to say, but it just reflects a lack of understanding of who and what the Taliban are, who and what Islam is. Islam, quoting from the Quran, it basically says, be not faint of heart when it is ye who have the uppermost. That means when you're on a roll, when you're winning in jihad, keep going. You don't sit down at the table and negotiate with anybody. You keep going. On the other hand, as I said before, if you're being pounded and you cannot win under Islamic doctrine and law, then it is obligatory to step back and step down. But that's not what's happening in Afghanistan right now. The Taliban, and now Islamic State is there too, as well as Al-Qaeda, they have no reason to sit down. They're not being defeated in any way, shape, or form because the Afghan people support them. And even when we and the entire coalition had over 150,000 troops in Afghanistan years past, they were not being defeated. And now, adding 4,000 to the 8,400 or so that we, the United States, have in there right now, that's going to do the job? Probably not. I am not advocating to go back up to 150,000 or plus whatever total troops in the country. I don't think Afghanistan is the place where we need to put that kind of blood and treasure, especially because we've already given the enemy what he wants, and that is the country, the government under Sharia.
I guess you partially answered this by what you were just saying, but is there any reason for America to be increasing troops right now back into Afghanistan?
I don't see why. I mean, what threat, even if, and the Taliban probably will, once again take over large parts of Afghanistan, maybe Kabul itself, what threat is that to the United States? And if indeed we see, and we need intelligence operatives with ability to monitor what's going on, we need all of our intelligence assets to do that, maybe some special forces too. And if we see that there are, let's say, extensive camps and training camps like that one that was bombed, that the United States attacked some couple months ago, if we see that happening again, well, we got Moabs for that. That's slang for mother of all bombs.
Yes.
What they call those very large explosives. So we got that. But troops on the ground, blood and treasure, throwing good lives, I mean, and money at this after 16 years and we haven't succeeded? No. I don't see the purpose for that whatsoever. And again, the 9/11 attacks did not come out of the Hindu Kush. They came out of Iran and Saudi Arabia.
Clare Lopez has been with us, and again, she is the vice president at the Center for Security Policy. We have a link to the Center for Security Policy.org. Of course, you don't have to write all that out because we have the link there as well. You're going to find all sorts of very good articles, not only by her, but by Frank Gaffney and a number of other people. So, Clare, thank you for giving us some time today, and have a great Labor Day weekend.
Thank you. Same to you.
Well, let's take a break, but before we do so, we'll take some phone calls because some of you would like to address some of the other issues. One of those has to do with this issue of religious liberty. Of course, Kelly Shackelford here, as we talked about his article, Can't Pray at Work, Can't Pray at Home. So let's go to Arizona first. Wayne, you certainly have some thoughts about this. What would you like to add to our conversation?
I am a practicing Christian. I am a born-again Christian, praise God. And I don't like the idea of someone trying to tell me when, where, and how I can pray to my Creator. When I leave this earth, I'm going to be face to face, eyeball to eyeball with Him. And I cannot see being embarrassed, saying, "Oh, Lord, I was ashamed of you when I was on this on earth." Come on, how does that work? Jesus Himself was not ashamed to die in public, stark naked, beat half to death. Even His mother would not have been able to recognize Him if she hadn't seen Him getting beat up.
Sure.
Come on.
And one of the things I thought I might add, since we're coming to a break, is you think about Daniel, the law of the Medes and the Persians. Daniel, you can't pray. Well, Daniel did. And I think if nothing else, if things don't turn around, Kelly, I think we're going to have some modern day Daniels.
Yeah, Wayne he needs to meet Coach Joe Kennedy, because what Wayne just said is so close to what I've seen Coach Kennedy when they ask him why he does this. He made a pledge to the Lord when he went into football that he was going to go to a knee on the battlefield. And this is a guy who was a Marine for 20 years.
That's right.
And, man, he speaks with the passion and very specific, a lot of the same words that Wayne used. And I think this is a wake-up call to all people of faith around the country. The Christians certainly need to wake up to this case and what's happening.
Thank you, Wayne. We're going to take a break, but if you'd like to join us, I suspect you have some comments about that. We'll take those calls right after this.
A three-judge panel from the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit has ruled that a school may ban a coach from praying silently, alone, on the field after a game. Coach Joe Kennedy served our country as a Marine. Upon retirement, he went to work as a football coach for Bremerton High School in Washington State. After games, he would wait until the players had cleared the field and then walk out, take a knee, and silently thank God for the opportunity to coach his players and for their hard work in the game. The prayer lasted like 15 to 30 seconds. No one complained. The coach never intentionally tried to get anyone to join him, though students and parents often did. After 7 years of allowing these prayers, school authorities told Coach Kennedy to stop them. He didn't, but continued the prayers alone. In October 2015, Coach Kennedy was fired. With help from First Liberty Institute, Coach Kennedy sued the school district. He is not seeking monetary damages. He told reporters, "I just want the ability to go back out there and help these young men, and also my constitutional rights that I fought for 20 years. The opinion states that the coach was acting as a public employee, not a private citizen. Therefore, his free speech rights were not protected. The opinion articulates a concern that people are left out on these occasions, and that actions such as prayer could promote disunity along religious lines. It states that students are, quote, impressionable and captive." Kelly Shackelford, one of Coach Kennedy's attorneys, told Fox host Shannon Bream, "It's almost like prayer is the new pornography. If you pray where people see you, that's a violation." When asked why it was important that he pray on the 50-yard line, the coach explains, "It's on the battlefield where we fought the battle. Instead of an end zone victory dance, this coach chooses to quietly give glory to God. He's a Marine. This battle is not over." For Point of View, I'm Penna Dexter.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Weekend edition, if you'd like to join us, 1-800-351-1212. Those of you that listen online just heard the commentary, the Viewpoints commentary by Penna Dexter, and it was about Coach Kennedy. And let's come back to that for just a minute, because, again, we're talking about a prayer that was 15 seconds to 30 seconds from a Marine who went and served in the military so that he would have the right to do that. You've probably seen some of the irony of this, haven't you, Kelly?
Oh, it's incredible. In fact, if you ask Coach Kennedy why he did this, is it because of his faith? He'll if you ask him, is it your faith or your Marine that was more? He'll say it's the Marine. Yes. He'll say, I expect as a Christian that people are not going to like what people do, and that things are going to happen. He said, but as a Marine, he said, what, I fought for this, this is our Constitution, and what kind of leader am I for these kids if I back down when the government tries to take away our freedoms? And so that's really, and people need to understand, there's a lot of pictures that show Coach Kennedy out with the kids because they love him.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a great coach. They love him. But that's not what he was fired for. He was fired for going to the 50, shaking hands with the other coaches, congratulations. But then his players nowhere near him, all by himself, going to a knee and for 15 to 20 seconds thanking God for the privilege of coaching. That's what he was fired for. And the opinion said the reason that was a problem was that somebody could see him.
Mm-hmm.
They said that, and they used these words, they said that he could have waited until everybody left and gone into a closet and prayed. And so,
it sounds like the book of Daniel, doesn't it?
It does. It's Daniel.
It is.
It's really, my comment on Fox was, well, I guess prayer is the new pornography, because that's kind of how they were treating it. Like, go into a closet, nobody here. But just the whole thought of this, that any spectator could see him pray, then it's gone. Well, I mean, again, you take that to where that leads, and every one of our teachers, administrators, they all lose their freedoms, the majority of time that they are awake, which is when they're at work.
It seems like an extension. I may have mentioned this. I think maybe in my show, Kerby, you were in my show one time, but how I remember in law school reading about the cases where the Supreme Court ultimately took the Bible out of public schools. And among the commentary, the facts of the case that they were focused on were that some children who were not Christian were, the testimony they were counting from the trial court was, they felt awkward, uncomfortable.
Yeah.
They
1962, because it was coercive. But this is not, because the kids were actually singing the fight song and had their backs turned to him when this happened, right?
Yeah, there was a concession in the case by the school district that Coach Kennedy never, ever used any coercion, asked them to pray to the internet. So that was never an issue,
Yeah, but I'm glad you're adding all of that. I was going to say that it's kind of like, though, and maybe there was some coercion back in the 60s, but this is the notion, the slightest hint that someone might see someone doing something religious and feel awkward is enough to banish the person who's trying to express their faith through prayer or crossing themselves, whatever they do. Is the slightest inconvenience of somebody else is enough to shut down freedom of religion. I remember thinking that even about the cases, and maybe some schools were too extreme and you had to be careful, but the idea that the discomfort of one person means that someone else can't express their faith, that's the wrong balance. That's the wrong priority.
Yeah, what message does their approach send?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
It is that,
godlessness is real. That's what
right.
it says.
And not only it's real, it's like
it's the truth.
And if you follow God, you're doing something bad.
Yeah.
You're going to get in trouble.
Pornography, like you said.
Yeah.
We have some other calls that want to ask about Marianne Sauce. Can we talk about that one too? Because that one was new to not only I think Debbie, but I think to some of our listeners. So let's go to Michael in Missouri. KNEO. That's the other part of it. Can't pray at work. Let's talk about this part. Can't pray at home. Michael, you have the floor. What would you like to ask?
I may be mistaken, but did you say that the courts said that since if the officers were ignorant of the law, of the Constitution, they weren't going to be held accountable?
Yes, that's unfortunately it was one of the more bizarre opinions I've read ever, certainly by a panel of 3 judges, a federal court of appeals panel, because they say in there, one of the judges said that this is one of the most extreme and concerning facts that they've ever seen. And then in the opinion, they say it's so extreme that there's no case like it. And because there's no case like it, maybe the officers didn't know they couldn't do this, and therefore we're going to give them what's called immunity in this case. And, I mean, it's like, what officer wouldn't know that you can't do this? It's incredible. It really is.
When I was in school, that was one of the basics that was taught. You teach constitutional law. If you're in law enforcement or criminal law or civil law, you teach the Constitution and you know what it says. You don't violate somebody's constitutional rights. And certainly ignorance is no excuse.
You know, it's true. I don't want to get too technical with people, Michael, but you're making a good point. Let me try to explain this in a simple way to folks. A doctrine has been created by the courts that says that since we don't want everybody suing our police officers if they don't like what they do, then what we say is the police officers can't be held liable unless they're violating a clearly established constitutional right of which any reasonable police officer would know. That's the standard. And so they have an extra protection that you and I don't have when they're being police. But even under that standard here, this is a clearly held constitutional right, the right to pray in your own home. Would a reasonable police officer know? Yes. And so the idea that this was so bad that there was not a case exactly like this, and therefore maybe they didn't know, is really it's a chilling decision, because it would almost give, most of our police officers are wonderful people, but it would give somebody who wanted to do something, they could do the most extreme thing they want, knowing that they're going to get a free pass under these judges. That's not the law. That's never been the law before.
And this point that there wasn't a case exactly on point. There is never any case precisely exactly as the same with the previous set of facts as the same as the previous case. They're all going to be fresh facts under that standard. Every set of fresh facts isn't exactly okay. And then the only thing I was going to say was to correct for our listeners. I said earlier this case occurred in San Francisco. It was actually in Kansas.
Kansas City, yeah, outside of Kansas City.
Okay.
And
one was in San Francisco, one in Kansas City. We have some people asking some real practical questions, which we'll take after the break.
Yes.
But you have some packets, don't you? If you have a teacher, a student, or something like that, there are some resources at First Liberty. So let's mention those real quick before we take a break.
Yeah, and again, I'll say, go look at the Sauce case. You can look at the briefs. You can read any of the stuff you want to read. But we have deals that pamphlets that lay out what your rights really are. What are your rights in the schools if you're a teacher? We have those. What are your rights in the workplace? There are federal laws protecting every person of faith in the workplace, even in a private company. What are your rights in the military with your faith? We have those. So they're called religious liberty protection kits. And we even have them to protect churches, to get their documents in order so they can't be attacked from some of these new ordinances that are being created to try to force the church to violate their faith. So all that's available at firstliberty.org.
So if you have some specific questions, just hold on the line, because we wonder whether or not the kids are even going to be able to pray over their meals anymore. So we'll get into that in just a minute. Those are some of the questions people have, so we'll get to those in a minute. But we need to take one of those mandatory breaks. We are privileged to have in studio with us today Kelly Shackelford, Debbie Georgatos. We'll also, before we're done, in the second hour, talk about some of the resources available at both of their websites. Let's take a break, though. There's a lot to read already, so take the time to read it, and we'll be right back.
From Affirm Films and Provident Films, who brought you War Room, comes All Saints. New pastor Michael Spurlock, his struggling congregation, and a group of refugees come together, trusting God as they plant seeds for a future that might just save them all.
Start a farm. We work together, we save the church.
All Saints, starring John Corbett. Now playing. Rated PG. Parental guidance suggested. More information is available at allsaintsmovie.com.
Point of View Radio wants to fuel change in our culture, but we need your help to do it. And I use the word need very intentionally. I worked with a well-known radio ministry for 29 years, a program that helped a lot of people. They got saved, they got elected to Congress. It produced a lot of good. But people started thinking that someone else would give, and that program isn't here anymore. Your gift today can make sure that doesn't happen to Point of View. Visit pointofview.net and click the banner Change Happens With You, or call 1-800-347-5151. Pointofview.net and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
I just thank God for y'all. I listen to you every day, truly. I wanted to thank y'all for everything you do each day to inform Christian families and our community about the things we can do, and just the way you're so informative. I listen to you daily and love you guys and appreciate you so much.
God bless you, Kerby, for keeping this show so on track and for the decades of wonderful help to this nation that Point of View has been. We're all big fans of your work, and we pray that God will just prosper it.
As a Christian, over the years that I've followed this program, I am constantly challenged to be on guard and to evaluate what's going on. And if for no other reason, to protect the caliber and the truth of your programming, I need to participate and to back your program financially to ensure that the truth stays out there for people to hear, to view, and to be a part of.
This is Point of View Radio.
Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Second hour today, it is our weekend edition. If you'd like to join us, 1-800-351-1212. Talked about everything from religious liberty to Afghan policy, and we'll get into some other issues. Matter of fact, one that I really want to focus on with these two lawyers in studio is the whole blocking of judicial nominees and where that's going to go. But one of the questions Wanda had, and she had to leave, but I'll ask it for her, and it's an important question. Debbie Georgatos, Kelly Shackelford in studio, and that is, we've got now all these students, they're in school, and they wonder, what rights do they have? They hear this story, Kelly, about Coach Joe Kennedy getting in trouble for praying on the 50-yard line by himself. And a lot of students are wondering, can I even bow my head over a meal? Because they've heard you talk about some of those cases. So, again, at First Liberty, you have some great packets of material, but talk about what are the rights of students anymore in light of some of these court cases?
Well, the great thing is that there's zero question about students. These opinions, which are wrong about teachers or about coaches, this is not the law in most places in the country. It's the law in San Francisco and the Ninth Circuit under this opinion, but this is not the law. Teachers can pray over their meals. Teachers can wear a cross. Jewish teachers can wear a yarmulke. They're not thrown out of school. That hadn't happened anywhere in the country, I don't think. So those are wrong. No question about students, because the only argument they're making against Coach Kennedy is that he works for the government.
Works for the government.
So there is a famous case called Mergens at the Supreme Court, and it says there is a crucial difference. This is the Supreme Court talking. There is a crucial difference between government speech endorsing or pushing religion, which the Constitution forbids, and private speech endorsing or pushing religion, which the Free Speech Clause and Free Exercise Clause protect. So the point is, if the speaker is private, in other words, they're not the government, they're a student, they're a parent, they're whoever, then not only is it okay for them to live out their faith, if the government interferes with them, the government is violating the First Amendment. So we have a number of those. We've had a number of those cases, and you always win those cases because there's cases going way back to the 1960s that say when students are at school, the restriction that they have. Let me point this out, and this is obvious, is they can't disrupt the classroom.
Right.
Okay. So, do you have the right to say the Lord's Prayer? Sure, you do. Do you have the right to say it in the middle of math class while the teacher is speaking? No, you can't disrupt the classroom. But do you have a right to answer, a question with a religious answer from your perspective? Sure. Do you have a right to have that in your work? Sure. Do you have a right to talk to others about your faith at school? Absolutely. Can you give a Bible to a friend? Sure you can, I mean, we can go on and on and on. Can you form a Christian club at your school? Yes. Supreme Court cases on it. And if the school tries to stop you, they lose. So the great news is the kids have incredible freedoms to really, really, really live out their faith in the school. And the only thing that generally stops them is intimidation and misinformation. And I'll tell you one quick story that I love. We had a student that went to this is his mom telling me the story at our Christmas party. She said, "Come here." And this little 16-year-old guy comes over, and she said, "Tell him the story." And he said, well, I went to my school, and I said I wanted to have a Bible club at my school. There's other clubs at my school.
Right.
And the principal said, "No, we can't have any religious clubs at the school." And he said, "Can you check with, like, you know, the district or the lawyers just to make sure, because I'm pretty sure it's not right. My mom's giving me some information and all this." And he said, "Sure, I will." And the principal comes back to him like a few days later, and he says, "Look, you can have the school." He said, "Let me tell you what happened. I called our attorney, and he said, 'Are you crazy telling him that? Do you know what First Liberty Institute will do to us if they find out?'" And
such a great line.
I don't know. To me, that was like, you know, the best story of the year.
Yes.
Because I was like, I don't even have to go anywhere. You know, I mean, it's the word's carrying,
Yeah.
and so it's obvious. It's been the law a long time, and really, a lot of times, you just need the information, because some people will try to intimidate you out of your rights if you don't know what your rights are. So I always tell people, if you don't know, if you have any confusion or whatever, just call. I mean, you know, just call First Liberty. We'll answer your questions. We'll send you a pamphlet, give you information, so that you're armed, knowing what your freedoms and your rights are.
I love that story. I'm so glad you told that. It's a great example. And you know what? The other thing, I know I've made this comment probably other times on this show, but because of the prevalence of organizations like Freedom From Religion and people who agitate against religious expression, I think that in some cases, I certainly agree that in many cases there are just people who are anti-Christian, anti-religion, and they're in places of power, and they just do want to shut down religious speech. But I also think, with respect to this story, there are people who just think, from what they read about freedom from religion, that the safer answer for a school or other public entities is just to say no. Say no, because we won't get into a fuss. So they need to hear, no, the safer answer is to honor religious freedom.
You know, Kelly said this before, that there are two ways administrators deal with this. The better way is to say, in the midst of pluralism and diversity, allow all opinions. But some administrators have said, well, if I have to allow a Bible club, I'll just get rid of all the clubs. So everybody out of the pool. So we won't have a speech club. We won't have a ski club. We won't have a debate club. We won't have a Bible club. And you've seen that happen too, haven't you?
I've seen them try that.
That doesn't last very long,
No,
though.
it never works, because there's always clubs. There's always ones even they don't know about. There's just almost no way to shut down free speech, and so it's occurring somewhere.
You shouldn't want to.
You shouldn't want to,
and so
anyway.
even if you try, it kind of wiggles out between your fingers somewhere else. And once there's one example, then you're dead, because now you're discriminating against the religious club. So generally that doesn't work. And I think generally schools want to have these opportunities and these clubs, whether it's the Boy Scouts, whether it's you name the club. There's so many of them, some sort of service club. There's always types of clubs. And what's great is seeing these kids go in there and say, I'm going to form a club. Like this one girl, she'd been cutting herself and everything, and then she came to know the Lord. And she's like, you know what? There are a lot of other girls like me. And so she started a club, and she got pushback. They were gay and lesbian clubs. They were every club, but they wouldn't let her have hers. We represented her. She had her club pretty soon. And I think her brother is now leading that club. It's in Long Island, New York.
That's great.
And they're reaching out to people. They're doing service projects in their community. They're making a difference through that effort.
Well, let's take a break, and I'll take some more phone calls. I think some of you have some specific questions, and you're welcome to ask those today. We are privileged to have in studio Debbie Georgatos and Kelly Shackelford. But we come back from the break. Also, I want to focus on another one of the articles we've posted, because the Freedom From Religion Foundation, we just mentioned them a minute ago, are so upset with Senator Marco Rubio because, are you ready for this? He's actually quoted from the Bible in some of his tweets. And so we'll get into that and talk about that for just a minute. And, of course, take some of your phone calls. If you'd like to join us today, religious liberty seems to be front and center, so we'll continue down that road. Later, though, we do want to talk about these judicial nominees and a number of other issues before Congress. So if you'd like to join us on any of those topics, 1-800-351-1212. We'll be right back.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
Even if it won't pass anytime in the future, we need to give credit to Senators David Perdue and Tom Cotton for drafting the RAISE Act and starting a needed discussion about immigration reform. Their bill would change some of the problems with our immigration policy that was implemented in 1965. The 1965 law gave preference to relatives of U.S. citizens over just about everyone else. At the time, it was thought that the beneficiaries would be small in number. That is not what has taken place. Nearly two-thirds of the new green cards issued each year are for relatives rather than for immigrants who could immediately help the U.S. economy. This policy has led to what critics call chain migration. One immigrant who is granted a green card sponsors a spouse, who then sponsors her siblings, who then sponsors her adult children. The process goes on and on for what seems like an endless chain. The RAISE Act would modernize immigration policy by using a point system. It would still allow family members, but also weight immigration towards those with skills needed in the American economy. Critics say that it would give high-skilled citizens from affluent countries in Europe a boost. That is true, but it would also help potential immigrants from poor countries that have skills needed in the American economy. Politicians who want to keep the current system argue that high immigration levels actually provide significant economic benefits to the U.S. economy. But an article in National Review quotes from studies at the JFK School of Government, and the research shows only a slight economic benefit in terms of GDP. A new policy that can favor skilled workers with high earning potential would also have a much more positive effect on our economy. It is doubtful the bill will pass anytime in the near future, but it deserves more attention and discussion. A change in immigration policy would be better for skilled immigrants and certainly better for America. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
From Sony Pictures, All Saints, the inspiring story of Pastor Michael Spurlock with John Corbett, now playing rated PG, allsaintsmovie.com.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
1-800-351-1212. One of the questions we're getting off the air, and we'll then take some of the calls, is, Kelly, can you give the information again about those packets at First Liberty, how to find them? Because I think people have been going to the website trying to figure out how, what words do I type in there to find the right spot?
Oh, gosh, I wish I had it in front of me.
Number
one, you could call. I mean, we're open, and so you can call the office, which is 972-941-4444. So 972-941-4444. But online, it's easy to get these. There's I think a resources.
Yes, if you can go to the upper right-hand corner, click on resources, then you've got Religious Liberty Protection Packet for the U.S. military, and then a whole series of other religious liberty packets for all sorts of other individuals.
For teachers, for students.
Ministries, schools, workplace. So then you should find it. So upper left-hand corner, hit resources, and then on the left-hand side, you filter by category: churches, military, schools, workplace, whatever you might be looking for.
And I would just say this: these give your rights, but if you have a specific situation, everything's you got to know the facts before you can really get a good assistance or whatever. So people call us. Just call it if you have a specific situation. Call. And we're happy to answer the questions and tell you, here's what the law says. I'll just say this: 99.9% of the time, if you're fearful, it's coming from the enemy to try to shut you down, because you have incredible freedom in this country, and you have the freedom to do that. But this is what the enemy will try to do. We'll try to scare your pastor from saying something. We'll try to scare you from saying something. We'll try to scare you from starting a group, from, you name it. So if you get some crazy idea that you're supposed to do a revival in your town and, well, you can't do that, then realize you probably can, and the law's probably on your side. It's just somebody doesn't want you to do it. And so realize that the freedoms are there, and look at the pamphlets and realize all the freedoms. Maybe come up with some creative ideas of things you could do. If you're about to start school, think of some things you could do. I love these examples of what these kids have done at these different schools and how they've just totally impacted their school by taking advantage of their freedoms. But if you have any questions, just call us.
Let me take a phone call or two, and then we'll continue down this road because many of you have questions or comments. Ed in Arizona, you've got a good hypothetical question, but why don't you put that on the table, and we'll see how Kelly and Debbie respond to that.
Well, hello, Kelly and Debbie, and this is Ed and Kerby. Well, my question is, where Coach Kennedy goes to high school or was working there, why couldn't the parents, there's a lot of Christian parents, I'm sure, in the school, could go out in the middle of the field at the end of the game and look up in the sky and pray to God? And what would happen to them if they did that?
Well, at first, nothing would have happened, but they didn't like that. They would have said that, that was because Coach Kennedy did it or whatever. But what they started doing actually towards the end is they banned anybody from coming on the field after the game because some parents had started to do that. I mean, at one point in this history, the coach had been doing this for 8 years.
Yeah.
He saw Facing the Giants, and the night before, what a coincidence, huh? The night before, he goes to work as a coach for the first time. And it just convicted him, and he said, God, I'm going to go to the 50 after every game and give you the thanks for coaching these young men. And he did it. And, at some point, like some kids said, hey, can we go out there when you – it's a free country. You can do whatever you want, And so anyway, but by the time we got to the end and it was controversial, they weren't allowing anybody on the field except for, the students and the players and all that. And as you mentioned, he didn't want the kids even nearby, and so he waited until they sang the fight song and were turned the other way, and he went all by himself to a knee, and that's what he was fired for.
Well, it just illustrates, again, some of the things that we're going to have to battle. You wouldn't think that would have been controversial, and for a number of years it wasn't. It was just, I think somebody said something to the school district, and that's when everybody goes, uh-oh, what are we going to deal with here?
They complimented the school district.
Yeah.
I will say this. I don't know if y'all saw this, but Franklin Graham and Jim Daly and a number of other leaders were very incensed and came out with very strong statements. But my favorite thing was what Franklin Graham challenged this weekend. He challenged every coach around the country to go to a knee on the field. And I thought that was that's great, because they do have the right to go to a knee and to pray. And these coaches aren't all in the Ninth Circuit. They don't all live in San Francisco or California, et cetera. But and I doubt anything would happen in most of those places. But it really is odd that we're living in a time where people can kneel to protest during the national anthem, but where you go to a knee to say a prayer silently by yourself, you can get fired. That shouldn't be America, and we're hopefully going to overturn this on appeal, but we've got a ways to go.
The other thing I was thinking when you were speaking just about how this coach has been doing this for 8 years, and there was no protest and nothing bad happened.
Yeah.
But it is a little bit like the statutes, Confederate statute thing. It's like they've been there for decades in most cases, and people walk by them. They may read us whatever the plaque is and say, oh, that's interesting. They've been there, but all of a sudden, because it's like the popular thing to do, we're going to be outraged by them and have a protest over them. It's like people are too easily swayed to get worked into a lather over something that was going along for quite a while and didn't hurt anything, and then pretty soon that you have people feel like they have to take sides, and it's a big controversy. And America's a great country with a lot of freedoms, and you really just need to be careful not to get lathered up into these hysteria and oppression of other people's. Well, in the case of the statutes, the oppression of the rest of America that wants them there, that wants to see the history. And anyway. That was kind of an aside, but
No,
I just think that lathered into irrationality like this.
The great news is we've also seen, I think, this week the opposite of that, which is the hurricane, and how America really has come together and shown what we really are like. When I think sometimes we're not busy enough, and people start fighting about things that are really silly. Now, some of these things are not silly. These anarchists and people who are wanting to take away speech and trying to change our country. But I do think there's something, there's something encouraging about watching, there are examples of stupidity, okay? Yes. The shoes, the First Lady's shoes. And all this stuff. I'm just glad they weren't complaining because Donald wasn't wearing her shoes. This is such a weird country right now. At least they were complaining that she was wearing stilettos. But all right, there's some dumb things, but overall, what we've seen is just heroic. I mean, it's inspiring. It's America. It's what this country's all about.
Let me just mention, we did post the response to Hurricane Harvey, the better side of divided America, which is a really good piece, and then one that was saying, no, it's not America at its best. So I wanted you to see both sides of it and see some of the stupid things they're saying. But just before taking a break, we made it real easy for you. If you go to our website right now, we have a direct link to First Liberty's Rights and Resources link. So those of you that were looking for that, just go right under Kelly's picture and his bio. It's even before the article of U.S. courts can't pray at work, can't pray at home. So we made the link really easy for everybody to find. And this is probably good, Kelly, because look at all these students. And Debbie, you are aware of this. You've been a mom as well. They're all going to school and they get intimidated and they're afraid that they can't bring their Bible to school. They're afraid they can't write a paper about Jesus. They're afraid they can't pray over their meal. And so we really need to educate the next generation.
We absolutely do. And I love what Kelly was saying about this is a lot coming from the children who just have an experience like getting over, finding Christ and getting over cutting themselves, or whatever the issue is that they have in their lives. And they're just so genuinely grateful. And this is the healthiest thing in America and in public schools, to have that exchange of ideas and that genuineness from that young girl's heart saying, look what happened in my life and it can help you, And these are just beautiful things about American culture that we should be celebrating and encouraging. Okay, so I'm chomping at the bit. We only have a minute here. I want to just mention to our listeners. I know you're directing traffic.
Rubio.
Oh yeah, Marco Rubio, unbelievable.
Yes,
can't even tweet a Bible verse. There'd be a lot. Actually, I was going to say in Texas, our own Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, he has I think it's either a daily or weekly post he puts up with a fabulous little verse of scripture, no commentary, just a reference to some, is almost all of them like beloved scriptural passages y'all know. And I just think in Texas, people just go, oh, I just love that. That's mainly the reaction of most people in Texas. Oh, I just love when he does that.
Well, when we come back from the break, we'll talk about our friends, and I put that in quote, Freedom from Religion Foundation, so upset that Senator Marco Rubio whores. Actually quotes from Bible verses in his Twitter account. We'll talk about that. And then we'll talk about some of these judicial nominees. That's an important issue, too, if we want to turn this around. So we'll take some more calls right after this.
There are those who listen to Point of View while they're driving, and some can listen at home or at work. But here's the question. Where do you go where you cannot listen to Point of View? Well, if you have the app, the free Point of View radio app, the answer is just about nowhere. This is an on-the-go world, and now wherever you go, Point of View goes with you. Visit the Apple or Google Play Store and download the free Point of View app. You can listen and watch the program live or play it again later. Get Kerby's Viewpoints commentary. Click the Take Action link, learn about important issues, and make a difference in this world. You can also read articles, find a local radio station, easily contact us with your comments or questions. Don't leave home or the office or anywhere else without Point of View. Again, visit the Apple or Google Play Store today and get the app, the free Point of View radio app. Oh, and one more thing, if you like it, click that little button that says Donate Now and join the team. Point of View and the Point of View app with you on the go. Point of View will continue after this.
are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Final half hour, if you'd like to join us, 1-800-351-1212. Certainly we have in studio with us today David Georgatos, Kelly Shackelford, and we've been holding this off long enough. One of the articles we've posted here comes from The Stream, and William Briggs writing about it. Freedom from Religion Foundation said, "We understand, Senator Marco Rubio, that you have been tweeting Bible verses to nearly 3 million followers. It appears that you began tweeting the Bible in mid-May and have been doing so regularly ever since. This is not an errant Bible verse or two, but more than 60 Bible verses in 3 months. That's enough tweets to tweet the entire book of Jude twice." Well, okay, fine, whatever.
And therefore,
but the bottom line is this is an unconstitutional violation. Kelly's already gone, but Debbie, I know you wanted to wait in. I've held you off for an hour and a half, so I know you are ready to say some things about this. What's your thoughts? I really am. I was just struck by the brazenness of even making this communication. This is, again, the Freedom from Religion Foundation. They're out of Wisconsin, right?
Yes.
Wisconsin. I mean, Kelly knows them very well. He'll explain them in a minute. They are the same group that has gone after city councils for having a prayer to open the meeting. They attack schools. They just are, you know, it's fine. You can be atheist in this country. No one's going to bother you. They are just belligerently atheist, but they are really trying to say, you know, religion just has no place in anything touching the public sphere. So Senator Marco Rubio, former presidential candidate, and he's a pretty active Twitter user, they're complaining that he actually includes Bible verses in his tweets, and there's no other substance to it. You're waiting for them to make some connection like, and only Christians will get welfare or something that he said in his Twitter. There's nothing like that. They're just tweets, and because he I guess loves the Bible, includes it. And I just think that's really, I'll go on this often about the kind of political or social culture that's evolved in America, where an organization would think this was a reasonable accusation to make. They called it a constitutional violation. So I'm sure Marco Rubio is not worried about it, but I think it is really a great thing to understand the brazenness of those who think that the right stance in America is just to drive religion out of the public sphere.
There's so many problems with this that it's hard to know where to start. The Freedom from Religion Foundation, by the way, if you don't know, it's an atheist group, a small group, really, out of Madison, Wisconsin. And really the way they operate is by sending letters, hoping that they can scare people into doing things. I mean, if you looked at how many lawsuits they file a year, I don't know. I'm thinking it could be it's probably less than on one hand. And they don't win a lot either. In fact, you know, we've always won in any suits we've been. But they'll send out tons of letters. In fact, we had some supporters put together a fund for all the cities, school districts, counties, etc., who got letters from them, so that we could go to all those people when they get these threatening letters and say, not only will we represent you for free, not only will we bring in the top attorneys in the country who will donate their time, but there's a whole fund set aside if anything was ever assessed against you. So that way you don't have to be intimidated into doing, you know, taking the cross off your city seal that's been there for 200 years, or, you know, just crazy stuff. But let's talk about this one. As I understand it, number one, this was Marco Rubio's personal account. I mean, this wasn't even his, you know, like Senate account, I don't think, which makes it even more ridiculous. Yeah. But even if it was, so people who are elected officials can't express religious beliefs in public. You know, I don't know, maybe he's been talking to that Ninth Circuit panel, right? Yes, you can do that. I mean, what I find interesting is what's unconstitutional is their attempt at censorship.
There you go.
So we're trying to censor the Bible. Isn't the Bible literature? Isn't, you know, I mean, is there any other literature you want to censor that you think is unconstitutional? I mean, everything is upside down here. The way it really works is if people have a right to free speech, and Marco Rubio does have a right to free speech, even though he's a senator, he still has a right to free speech. if they're allowed to speak secular words, you can't come in and say, but you can't say any religious words.
Mm-hmm.
That's religious discrimination. It's against the law. And so, what is, we go back to what Debbie was talking about earlier here, which is what kind of country are we going to live in? We believe in America in the free flow of ideas, in the marketplace of ideas, that if we have enough competition, that the best ideas will rise up, that truth will win out. You don't start censoring certain segments of society from expressing their ideas, because then you miss out on some good ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they're trying to do here. They want, go to the website. What they would like is a country without religion.
Mm-hmm.
And again, going back to what Debbie, we were talking about earlier, that's what makes this country so special, is go to the Declaration of Independence. We believe our rights don't come from any government. We believe they come from God, and the government's job is to protect those God-created, God-given rights. That is very different than every other country in the world that thinks their rights actually come from what the government gave them.
I was just thinking you should respond sometime to this Freedom from Religion Foundation. Thank you for your letter. We'll pray for you. I was just thinking just about that notion of, honestly, they are to be fought. They have to be fought. But really, what a pathetic sense of purpose in life to drive God out of American society.
Yeah.
What a really regrettable purpose in life.
Kelly said something in passing. I want to come back again. In every lawsuit that you've had against the Freedom from Religion Foundation, you've won every single time. This is just amazing to me. And that fearful man the other day saying, First Liberty might sue us. And, of course, over the years, people have come to realize that before, when there was only one game in town, the ACLU, they all said, I was afraid that the ACLU would sue us. So we were just going to remove anything religious. But when there was a countervailing force out there, like First Liberty, American Center for Law and Justice, whatever it might be, that kind of evened up the playing field. For a long time, the other side was playing football where only one team was on the field.
And if you look at the last 30, 35 years, you'll see a dramatic difference in the cases on religious freedom and where they've been going as a result. Because the Constitution and our history protects religious freedom. And when people are there to make those arguments, then, those arguments should win, and they do win most of the time. Now, it does depend on making sure we have judges that are following the law.
Yeah, well, we're going to get to that in just a second.
And that's very important. And, of course, that's why a lot of people cast the vote they cast in the election, because of the Supreme Court. But what a lot of them don't realize is there's 140 judicial seats. These are lifetime appointment
vacancies.
Judges waiting to be filled by President Trump, and there's a lot going on that.
I want to get to that in just a minute. I do want to take one phone call because John in Kentucky wanted to at least finish off some of the conversation we had here on religious liberty. So, John, you have the floor.
Yeah, good day. How you all doing?
We're good.
Great.
Yeah, I'm just old Southern country boy. Used to be a coal miner, but years ago. But long story short, who said you can't pray in your own home or business? Or I'm a businessman, small businessman. But who said you can't pray in you? Who said that?
Well, in the cases that were being referenced, the Ninth Circuit, which is Rush Limbaugh refers to as the Ninth Circus, right? It's the most liberal federal court of appeals in the country and the most overturned. They had a 3-judge panel that, in the Coach Kennedy case, told Coach Kennedy that he was not allowed to pray. He goes after the game by himself to a knee on the field and just gives thanks for 15 to 20 seconds. They told him he could not do that because somebody in the audience might see him, and they would, therefore think the government is praying, and that's a violation of the Constitution. So that's the one of at work. They said anytime you're on duty, as a coach, you can't ever pray.
They were saying it's an establishment clause violation.
That's right.
That's establishing a religion by praying while you're in a school uniform. Putting that together is pretty amazing.
Yeah, and it's just not true. All teachers, everybody who works for the government sort of wears two hats. They're an I'm the government, and they're also an I'm a citizen. They have rights to free speech. They have rights to freedom of religion, etc. The good news is, again, the laws do protect these people. They do. The First Amendment, free exercise, free speech, and in particular, John, there are federal and state laws protecting religious freedom in the workplace too. So that's the good news. The second, in your home, is the Sauce case, and there a 3-judge panel actually upheld a decision against a woman who was actually ordered not to pray in her own home by 2 police officers. And the rationale was bizarre, so, it might not be repeated, but he said it was so extreme that maybe there had never been an opinion like it, and the police officers weren't aware that what they were doing was a violation, so this time he would let them off.
Well, again, the article is on our website. We'll come back and talk about these judicial nominations right after this.
A 3-judge panel from the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit has ruled that a school may ban a coach from praying silently, alone, on the field after a game. Coach Joe Kennedy served our country as a Marine. Upon retirement, he went to work as a football coach for Bremerton High School in Washington State. After games, he would wait until the players had cleared the field and then walk out, take a knee, and silently thank God for the opportunity to coach his players and for their hard work in the game. The prayer lasted like 15 to 30 seconds. No one complained. The coach never intentionally tried to get anyone to join him, though students and parents often did. After 7 years of allowing these prayers, school authorities told Coach Kennedy to stop them. He didn't, but continued the prayers alone. In October 2015, Coach Kennedy was fired. With help from First Liberty Institute, Coach Kennedy sued the school district. He is not seeking monetary damages. He told reporters, "I just want the ability to go back out there and help these young men, and also my constitutional rights that I fought for 20 years. The opinion states that the coach was acting as a public employee, not a private citizen. Therefore, his free speech rights were not protected. The opinion articulates a concern that people are left out on these occasions, and that actions such as prayer could promote disunity along religious lines. It states that students are, quote, impressionable and captive." Kelly Shackelford, one of Coach Kennedy's attorneys, told Fox host Shannon Bream, "It's almost like prayer is the new pornography. If you pray where people see you, that's a violation." When asked why it was important that he pray on the 50-yard line, the coach explains, "It's on the battlefield where we fought the battle. Instead of an end zone victory dance, this coach chooses to quietly give glory to God. He's a Marine. This battle is not over." For Point of View, I'm Penna Dexter.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Back for a few more minutes, and again, we have Debbie Georgatos and Kelly Shackelford in studio. I want to talk about judicial nominees, and we have some very good articles on the website. But if you've actually kept track of some of these numbers, in the first 6 months, President Trump's administration made 257 nominations. But the Senate, up until just recently, had only confirmed 55 of the 257, where in the same period of time, President Obama had 206 nominations confirmed. Now, they did kind of do a last rush before they went out of town, but still, there are all sorts of nominations. These are, of course, governmental positions, but in addition to that, you have judicial nominees. And it seems to me, Kelly, that if we want to solve some of the problems we're talking about here, getting the right judges in the right courts, especially in these appeals courts, because very few cases go to the Supreme Court, as you well know. These are very important issues, and there seems to be a judicial blockade. What are your thoughts?
Oh, there's no doubt. There's been a number of articles come out in the last 2 weeks on what the Democrats have been doing, which is they've been invoking 30 hours of debate on everybody who they're even for.
Yeah.
And so
blue slips, I guess, is what they
well,
use.
there's that too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Then they blue slip people too, but they're abusing the rules. These rules were meant like, a blue slip or something. If you have a problem and you want to talk to the president about a major nominee, then you do that to have but they're doing it just carte blanche.
Yes.
And so literally with the nominations they have right now, if they don't stop this, it would take 11 years to confirm.
They're going very slowly.
Yeah, so they've got to. There's I think a hashtag gridlock reform, and some others. There are a number of ways to do this. One is just easily change the rules, which the Republicans do. They have a majority, but they can even use the rules in certain ways and force them to do that. But they cannot wait any longer. They need to push this because there are 140 judicial seats. These are lifetime appointments. If they wait until it gets close to another election, then it all gets politicized and slowed down and all that. They need to move. They need to clean this out. There's a group called Judicial Crisis Network that kind of is behind trying to help get judges on the court. It's a conservative group, but it's Judicial Crisis Network. They'll have a number of those articles. But I would encourage people, we're going to have, I think, here in the next week or so on our website, a map. I think we've already got a map, but it'll show all the seats. You'll be able to click on, these are judicial seats. You'll be able to click on the senators and who to call. And that way people can start calling their senators and saying, look, this slowdown is not acceptable. This is why I voted for you. This is why I voted for president, is because I wanted good judges on the court. And so far we've got 6. Okay, everybody knows about Gorsuch. There's 140 seats. 6 have gotten through
out of 140.
And let me tell you, it's not because Trump and his White House is not filling the pipelines with some very, very good people. It's happening. It's just that everything has been slowed down on purpose, and they can't let that delay continue.
Another aspect of all of this is, we talk about all these cases that we have in the show many years that involve, for example, marriage and abortion. And the American left has pushed an agenda that they cannot get passed by legislatures. They can't get it through the American people choosing the House and the Senate or even the state legislatures. So the real leftist movement in this country to grow the power of government and to drive God out of American culture and political culture is really been implemented in large part through the courts. And so the Democrats stalling in the Senate in not confirming judicial nominees quickly enough is not just because they like to be obstreperous to President Trump, which they do, but it's because they see the power in the courts, and their power will be stripped back if we are able to fill many of these openings with conservative justices who actually follow the Constitution. It's a very deliberate and a politically maneuvering thing. And the other thing that is just vital to understand about this is that it is within the power of the Republican majority in the Senate, even though we only have 51, it is within the power of them to change rules. This blue slip thing, which is basically any justice who's been nominated to serve in a federal court, the 2 senators from his or her home state have to submit a blue slip saying go for it. And so they just don't do it. They just sit in their hands. And so this is not one of the
Especially
10 Commandments.
Out of Minnesota, where you were recently. Yeah.
Yes, this is not in the 10 Commandments. This is not in the Constitution. This is a rule, and it can be changed. And the Republicans need to get some backbone. So I was going to say the same thing that was a moment ago that Kelly said. This Judicial Crisis Network is trying to pull together conservative groups to urge people, get your senator on board with the notion we expect you to do your job. If the Democrats are impeding the process, then you fix it because you have the power to do it, and we don't. We, the voters, don't. You do. We need you to fix it.
I've got a couple articles, one here, blocking judicial nominees, and then Kelly gave us one, using Senate rules. So we have both of those up there. And Kelly, you're going to put up a map, but I might just mention again, people have been tuning in and out. We also have a link to the First Liberties Rights and Resources link. And as soon as you have your map up, you let me know and we'll put a link up there as well.
It's up now to some extent.
Okay.
Like if you went to firstliberty.org/courts.
Courts. Gotcha.
It would show you. It's
Okay,
just
we'll try to put that up.
we're trying to get it updated with all the judges and all the seats because it's growing. And the contact information for the senators who are the ones that are, really behind those. Because what happens is the president makes these picks under the Constitution, and these are lifetime appointments. But they do consult with the senators of that home state where those seats are being picked, and therefore that's a good way to kind of focus. But this is something everybody definitely needs to be weighing in on. Because the gridlock it's got to stop. I think it's going to stop because you can't allow this to happen.
So, again, lots of great resources on the website. Debbie, let me come to you for just a minute because you get a chance on Sunday to keep talking about this, and that's America Can We Talk? And we have a link to your website. What will people find when they go to the website? What will they hear when they listen to you on Sunday?
Thank you for the opportunity to say this. The show is called America Can We Talk? And to listen, if you're in Texas, you can hear it on 6:60 a.m. Sunday evening, 6 to 8 p.m. Central Time. If you're anywhere in America, go to our Facebook page, America Can We Talk? People have been listening more and more online, so you can see us in the studio. We do Facebook Live, and all of our shows are cataloged. All our interviews are available at americacanwetalk.org as well as on SoundCloud and iTunes. So we do catalog them all. And this Sunday, what we have on is a gentleman who took over Kellyanne Conway's The Polling Company. He's going to tell us basically how polling can be used to dig out truth that you don't know, and also to can mislead people. And so we're going to let him tell us how how do you tell a good poll from a fake poll? And so we'll be doing that this Sunday.
And again, Kelly, we've got a link to First Liberties Rights and Resources link. And again, I've encouraged a lot of people to get your article that came out today in The Hill. U.S. courts can't pray at work, can't pray at home. And I would encourage people to read it and then click on that share button. You can put it on your Facebook page, tweet it out, and start a conversation. So
it's a great conversation. So I think most people have heard of the Coach Kennedy case, which is certainly a starting point right there. And again, if, as things happen, people start getting in arguments about something, there's always a gadfly somewhere. You can always go to our website, get the actual briefs, actual opinions, actual anything you need. It's all there.
Well, again, let me just mention that this week we've also tried to collect funds for disaster relief. Hurricane Harvey, that went to a Samaritan's Purse. We had a chance to talk with some of the people involved on the ground. So, again, that resource is available on our website. And I hope you have a great Labor Day weekend. Monday, you might imagine we're going to play a tape, and then we're back live on Tuesday. So, again, if you want some of these resources, they're all available at the website, pointofview.net. I want to thank Andrew and Elisa and Steve for their help behind the scenes. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you back here on Tuesday, right here on Point of View.
Would you like to be above average or exceptional? I'll explain how you can be in a moment. What do you think about change? Some people love it, others not so much. I'm guessing you agree our culture needs change. But how will that happen? Change happens with you and your influence. If each of us does our part, God can change the culture through us. That's a goal at Point of View, to help you change things around you. We never charge for the information we deliver each day, but that information is not free. There is a significant cost in getting it to you. You know who helps us do that? About 1 out of every 800 listeners to Point of View. So you can be above average. You can be exceptional by visiting pointofview.net and clicking the banner Change Happens with You, or by calling 1-800-347-5151. Thank you for being exceptional by supporting Point of View. Pointofview.net and 800-347-5151. Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries.
I just thank God for y'all. I listen to you every day, truly. I wanted to thank y'all for everything you do each day to inform Christian families and our community about the things we can do, and just the way you're so informative. I listen to you daily and love you guys and appreciate you so much.
God bless you, Kerby, for keeping this show so on track and for the decades of wonderful help to this nation that Point of View has been. We're all big fans of your work, and we pray that God will just prosper it.
As a Christian, over the years that I've followed this program, I am constantly challenged to be on guard and to evaluate what's going on. And if for no other reason, to protect the caliber and the truth of your programming, I need to participate and to back your program financially to ensure that the truth stays out there for people to hear, to view, and to be a part of.